Hey guys, ECRG here, back with another episode. The title of today's episode is actually a part 2 to an episode I uploaded recently to the YouTube channel about the COVID-19, the coronavirus that is sweeping through America right now and has already been all over the world, or in most places around the world, but starting in China. How is it affecting clinical research? And the last episode I made was how it could affect clinical research, but now I'm talking about how it actually has, because there has been new developments since the few days I have uploaded that video. So let's go ahead and get into it. COVID-19 is the coronavirus variant that is sweeping through America right now. And, this episode is going to be more geared towards America because that's where I'm a CRA. That's where I monitor. That's the territory I am most familiar with. And I'm going to tell you guys about how it is affecting all of the sites, all of the companies in America, and what is to come. So keep in mind, I'm talking from a sponsor's perspective. I work for a sponsor. I think there are some very kind of dark things that will happen to a lot of the CRAs and CRO workers, because CROs are just middlemen for the sponsors and the sites. So we'll talk about that first, actually. So for CRAs, I'm sorry to report this, but a lot of you guys are about to get laid off because of this coronavirus. If this thing goes on longer than 2 months. A lot of contractors, y'all are going to be first to get laid off. If you're a contract CRA, I hope you have 3 to 6 months of emergency funds saved up, because y'all are going to be the first to get laid off. And not a lot of people think about that, but if you're not able to go on site, which, we're already receiving guidances, pretty much almost all of my sites have sent out some kind of emails regarding monitor policy, visitor policy. They don't want any monitors on site at all. And, if a CRA can't monitor, if they can't go on site, then they're not being very useful. CROs only make their money when monitors go on site. That's how they make the most money. That's one of the positions where they make the most money on the service, is a CRA monitor, especially a salaried one, because, they're working 60, 80 hours a week and they're just getting paid the same base pay. But a contract CRA, they might work that time, but they're getting paid for every hour they work. But yeah, so if a CRA is not going on site for a CRO, they're in big trouble. So a lot of you people may know this, but at a CRO, you fill out a time card and you talk about where your time is going every single week. And for a lot of those CRAs, they're not going on site anymore. So pretty much all of them have been just chopped at the knees from going on site. So, week after week, these next couple weeks, they are not allowed to go on site. So they're not going to be able to bill. The CRO is not going to be able to bill the sponsor for that, for the CRA going on site. So that means the CRO now has a big overhead, a very large overhead on the order of millions of dollars all of a sudden, especially these big CROs. These CRAs getting paid, 100,000, 120,000, and they have big, large teams of CRAs at these CROs. So now all of a sudden, a huge portion of your workforce just became unbillable. They're just basically a liability to you. So unfortunately, a lot of people are about to get laid off. And so whenever, a CRA becomes unbillable, that's usually when it happens. Layoffs are coming, and expect it from the big CROs first. Like IQVIA, Parexel, those big ones, Cineos, expect CRA layoffs from those big ones. And that's one of the main things that's going to happen. We're already getting, like I mentioned before, we're already getting notices from each of our sites. New York was one where you're getting a lot of notices where they do not want any monitors. Some sites are saying, if the state hasn't had a state of emergency, monitors can come. Each site has their different protocols, but all the ones in New York are pretty much saying no monitors. So that means automatic remote visits. And this is where the CRAs get in trouble, is because the remote visits are there's already a person that is in charge of that. That's going to be an in-house CRA or a CTA. So the CRA is going to have no work to do pretty much if they can only do remote visits. And so they're really going to be in trouble. At least at the CRO level. The sponsor level, it's a little bit different. Because, you work for the sponsor. You're not, the CRO is trading on margins here. They're collecting the money from the what they sell the CRA services to the sponsor and what they're paying the CRA. That's how the CRO is making their money, if that makes sense. It's that margin, that delta between what they're selling the CRA for and what they're being paid for the CRA for. So there's that margin. And that's what, and that's how they make their money. So if they're not making any money from the largest or one of the larger workforce or one of the larger high earning people of the company, they're in big trouble. So yeah, this is an ongoing development. We have never been in this territory before where with COVID-19, where we never had really any pandemic like this before in clinical research, because this is something that is spreading so fast. People, don't have any symptoms, and they're being able to spread it to other people. This is crazy. And, people are dying all over the world. Cases are spiking every single day. The stock markets are going down. That's another thing that's affecting the CROs. This is a very, very fluid situation. And, day by day, it's changing. One day, you're allowed to go on a monitoring visit at a place. The next day, they close it off. No, you're not allowed to go on a monitoring visit. I literally scheduled this, a couple weeks ago, monitoring visit in Washington, D.C. That site hasn't sent out any guidance to me yet on, what their visitor policy is. The study coordinator did mention that their visitor policy is still in effect, that, people can still visit, but they have limited business travel for any of the employees of that hospital, saying no business travel. So I think what's next from that site is going to be, no new visitors, especially if there's a huge spike in Washington, D.C. of coronavirus cases. So this is something that's definitely changing day by day and not for the better. This is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. This may be, how do I say it? This may be controversial, but thank goodness there's somebody like Trump in office, because he's not afraid to do things that other presidents may not be willing to do. And I think what's really going to need to happen in the U.S. is to stop all air travel, because it just spreads the thing too fast. If we can just don't do any air travel, everyone just stay put for a couple weeks, this thing can be over in a few weeks, likely, or a month. But, I don't see that happening in the USA, but maybe Trump is crazy enough to do that. He's just crazy enough to do that. I mean, he just banned all international travel coming from Europe, which I think is actually a good move, to not have any new cases coming into the U.S. Because if you're constantly traveling forth, you can't monitor this and where it's going. These cases, people are only the cases are only cropping up when the symptoms crop up. That's the only way people are going to the hospital. There's not enough tests in the USA, coronavirus tests, to test people when they're not symptomatic. So, it's hard to get a grip on what's going on here. But clearly people are interacting with coronavirus cases, and, they're being symptomatic, days later. So they don't even know where it came from. It's hard to say where it was traced from. So this is going to be a big, big mess. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Some other big news that happened today, or recently in the past couple of days, is the NCAA canceled March Madness. And, they really didn't want to. As you can see, they were some of the last people to do it. The NCAA has always treated the players not great. And, they were really last. March Madness is their big, big moneymaker. They make billions of dollars with a B on March Madness. I think they make, over $1 billion from March Madness alone. That's where they get most of their money. And they canceled that. So this is a big, big deal. You've got leagues like the NBA, which was early. They did that, yesterday. They canceled the whole entire season. You got NHL, MLB canceled play. I mean, pretty much everything where you have a lot of people around is going to be canceled. I see airlines canceling flights to overseas places, airlines canceling flights even to in-state places because, maybe there's not enough demand. Maybe they want to stop the spread or minimize the spread as much as possible. So everyone, we really going to need all hands on deck to minimize the spread of this coronavirus because, there's a segment of population that's very at risk for this. And, it's not just an old person's disease. I think that's a myth. Most people that have died have some kind of underlying condition. That seems true, but there are people that have died that have been young, fit and healthy also, that have died from the coronavirus. So it's not just an old person's disease. We're constantly learning about it. But from the sponsor's perspective, it's a little bit different because not everyone, it's a very different model because from the CRO. So I think this from people that work for the sponsor or work at the sponsor, like pharmaceutical company, et cetera, they're a little bit safer from this because, a lot of companies are shifting to work from home during this crisis. I've heard of countless companies, pharma companies that have said, for the next 14 days, which was probably going to end up being longer, it's probably going to be extended, they want their workers to work from home. But of course, pharmaceutical companies, they are the ones actually manufacturing products. So that can't go. That can't stop. So they are having, only necessary personnel go into work to do it. But most people that can work from home are being told to work from home now. And this has happened today. Today is, what's today's date? March 12th. Thursday, March 12th is the recording of this. Most people that I know that work in clinical, at least, are being told to go home. My company sent out a guidance for everyone to work from home. I've heard of other companies that are being told to work from home if you can too. Now, luckily in the clinical department, project management department, we can work remotely anyway. Most people I know in those departments, study startup, all we're doing is going in the office and looking at a computer anyway. So we can do that at home. Most people are working from home. So, or are capable of working from home. So that makes an easy transition. And really it's going to be curious because obviously remote work is the future. So it's going to be curious how many companies adopt that better after this coronavirus or see, what it can do. I mean, obviously if no one's in there, your expenses are going to be way lower. You're going to need less space to operate as a company. So we'll see what happens. I think that'll be an interesting take to see what happens after the coronavirus epidemic. But, we're still learning this. I'm probably going to make another episode about the coronavirus too, later on to see, because I think this is just the beginning of the iceberg. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And, plenty of things are to come from this. This is not something that's going to be over with quickly because I think the U.S. is going to be, reluctant to do certain things, but it sounds like a lot of private industry, just wants to put the clamp on it now, kind of stem the bleeding now before later on it becomes so ridiculous that there's just gushing blood. A lot of people are talking about the coronavirus putting the U.S. in a recession-like pattern, and, we'll see how that plays out. I've never worked in the pharmaceutical industry / clinical research industry during a recession. I've asked other people what it's like during that, and they said it's been pretty good, but pretty good as in pretty stable. But I mean, this is something. The coronavirus is something that we're doing clinical research on at-risk patients, patients with patients that have compromised immune systems a lot of the time. And so this is something that uniquely affects them, our patients. So there's a lot of worry about how this will affect clinical trials. And there's a lot of worry about how it will affect the patients. Will it mess up clinical trials if one of them catches the coronavirus, or if a study coordinator catches the coronavirus and transmits it to multiple patients? It'll be interesting to see those people that, have investigator meetings, if all investigator meetings are going to be remote for the next few months. just because it's too high a risk to get all the staff, the PIs, the study coordinators, coronavirus, or any type of meeting with all of the investigational staff and all of the clinical research staff. All those meetings are probably going to be canceled. We're seeing, all events where there's a lot of people, concerts. Coachella was canceled. Obviously, all the MLB, NHL, basketball games were canceled. Before that, they were talking about going to some kind of intermediate step where there's no fans and only, mandatory personnel and families. But they just said, this is too great a risk. We're just going to suspend it. So, if they're going to do that, an organization that make millions and millions of dollars every day putting out that product, if they're just going to suspend it and say this is too risky to even play the games with no fans and still collect those millions of dollars in ad revenue, this is serious, because they didn't make that decision lightly. I can guarantee that. So this is serious, and we're going to see how this plays out towards the end. But I think this is just the beginning, and we have not gotten to the worst of it just yet. So we'll have more updates the next few days as I know more, as we all know more, and we learn more about this coronavirus, and we'll discuss more how it will impact clinical research. So as always, if you guys are interested in resume review program, I still will be conducting them. Actually, I'll probably have more time to even do them during this, honestly. So if you're interested in that, and I should probably do a video about how to, how this will impact your application chances and all that stuff. So I'll do that too. But yeah, if you're interested in resume review or any type of prep work, now is a good time, because I'm going to be less busy during this time. So email me eliteclinicalgroup@gmail.com.